Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of ROC Movie Reviews. Today, we will be reviewing the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film. This is my friend Ryan. Say hi, Ryan.
Hello.
So, the plot of this movie is Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson need to stop a series of murders that have been committed in the past couple of weeks. And it's almost fueled by some religious standpoint as well.
Certainly.
Yeah. So they're trying to stop this murder in particular to find out who the culprit of all these killings is, right? So that's basically the plot of the movie. They also need to grapple with their own relationship because they have tension between each other. Of course, every human being has tension, right? And
well, they also have to see if Blackwell did actually rise from the grave after being
exactly.
hung.
Did this guy actually rise from the grave after being hung for committing several acts of murder? So that's the overall plot of the movie. They have to find out who the culprit of these murders is and bring him to justice and see if he actually rose from the grave. So that's about it. As you and I already know, the cast is pretty well stacked. We've got Robert Downey Jr., Jude Law, Rachel McAdams, and one of your favorites, Mark Strong.
I wouldn't say he's my favorite.
I
just know who he is.
Okay, all right. Well, he's a decent actor.
He's pretty good, yeah.
He's pretty good. He's pretty compelling. He's got the menacing tone down, and the very the cold, calculated whispering and all that.
Very egocentric as well.
Yes, very, very egocentric, full of himself, and he's not even gonna let Sherlock Holmes knock him down a peg.
Yeah,
he's the same intellectual level as Sherlock Holmes in a sense, but the evil sense. So, but Jude Law, what'd you think of him as Watson?
I thought he was pretty good. He does a good job, because a lot of the times it's him balancing off of Sherlock Holmes and his wittiness.
Yep.
So he does kind of make himself grounded in that sense, the sort of voice of normality, if you will.
Yeah.
So he does a pretty good job, as well as the aesthetic. He does capture the original look as well as Sherlock
the original
Holmes.
look was very cool. I like the fact that he also was pretty kick-ass. I mean, he had that wooden, that blade concealed in a wooden, I don't know, pole of some sort, and that was pretty cool. So he could handle his own if Holmes wasn't around. So that was pretty cool to see that. And I didn't read the original books.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So I didn't really know what to expect from Dr. Watson. I thought he was the shorter, less courageous version of Sherlock Holmes, and he was the sidekick, But for a sidekick, he does a pretty large amount of stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
So, but I liked him.
What I like is that he's not just a sidekick, because Sherlock will have to do things, and then he'll have Watson do things that both work off of each other in a sense.
And they both contribute to the overall story,
Yeah.
so it feels necessary.
He's not just in the background, is basically...
It's yeah, exactly. He's not just standing there and watching Holmes do all the stuff, and he's just there for moral support or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings me to Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes. I had only seen Robert Downey Jr. in the first Iron Man. That was all I had seen him in first. So I was skeptical about him playing such a loved character in just the books, that he was this high and mighty character that was so well fleshed out, and I honestly felt that they did a good job in the movie.
I think he did pretty good. I didn't expect so much from him, because I've seen him in things like Iron Man and The Judge and things like that, where he's very... I couldn't see him doing a British accent very well. And he does do it very well as he is very witty. It's almost like a Jack Sparrow-ish sort of thing, where he topples around and stuff when he's fighting.
Yeah.
So
from the very beginning shot, you can tell that he's become this character. His voice is different, his aesthetic is different, his appearance, And that really drew me into the character as well as the whole story, you know. And I love the way they portrayed London as this very dark, kind of grimy city full of crime and corruption. That was cool because that's probably one of the more accurate things about London in that time period, as well as staying truthful to the books as well.
For the most part, yeah.
I would think. I haven't read the books, like I said, but, you know, that was, so that was very cool. And I love the fact that they didn't, they never sugarcoated anything in the movie either.
Yeah, not really.
No, it was very, and the other thing was Holmes was a very, not egocentric, but he was so brilliant that he sometimes let his brilliance, like, go too far, you know?
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, like the fact that he stayed in his room for, like, weeks and weeks, you know? That really captured, like, okay, when he doesn't have a case, he seriously doesn't know what to do. So that was cool, and that added a lot of humor, too. There was a lot of great lines between him and Jude Law that were very, very funny. I was surprised. And they just worked so well off of each other because they were, their kibitzing back and forth, was really well handled, in my opinion.
I feel like a lot of the humor from that was pretty good for the most part. Like, just them talking, but then they had, like, a lot of the slapstick I felt was out of place. Like, it didn't really belong.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember some of the slapstick.
Well, one of them was when they're looking for Blackwell, because he just escaped or whatever, and they have their guns out, and he's like, don't waste all your bullets, and then noise happens, wastes all their bullets. No, I thought I said not to waste your bullets. So it's like,
yeah,
and then there's the part where that really big guy, and Sherlock is running away from him, and he has the big hammer, and he's like, well, I grabbed my little hammer, it's not as big as that one.
He throws it at him, it does nothing to effect, and then he swings it, and he, like, ducks.
I just feel like a lot of the humor from Sherlock was the good, like, interactions between Watson and him, like the intellectual sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I just feel like the slapstick was kind of
out of place.
Trying to pander to an audience, sort of.
Yeah, it was, but on the other hand, I did appreciate some of it because it was in a fairly dark movie. It was setting a lighter tone as well.
Yeah.
So it's not this, rated R movie with this very graphic violence. So I like the fact that they didn't go that far, and the fact that they also tried to make it funny as well as clever. So I appreciate that aspect. Maybe not all of it, but I laughed when he threw the hammer at the guy and it did nothing, and he just is standing there and the guy swings it at him and he's like, oh boy. So, but I enjoyed that scene. So
for the most part, the humor was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's different. It's more like sort of what you get with like that British sort of humor. Not just in those types of movies, but like Monty Python and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the scene where you said where he wastes the bullets, it's like, what was that about wasting bullets? Just the way he said it. I mean, he could have said it more flat, but the way he delivered it was sharp, and it was on point. So you did, even though it wasn't your favorite, you can't deny that he did deliver it fairly well.
Well, like I said, all the actors did very well. They portrayed their roles very well, but it's like, it's with the writing,
Yeah,
you can still deliver a line pretty well, and it can still be, not the best.
Yeah, that's true. Which leads me to the next character, Rachel McAdams as Irene Adler.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of her character? Because I'm curious to hear what you thought.
She did pretty well. She just wasn't like too memorable, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, she
just was kind of this like rebellious rebel that's like, I know the streets. Did I mention that I know the streets? Like,
yeah, I can definitely see that. She also kind of became the damsel in distress here and there.
Yeah, certainly, like when
And that was a little bit disappointing because it was like, she's portrayed in the beginning as this very independent woman who's very strong and can hold her own without any man protecting her. And then in the end, she ends up having to be saved by Sherlock Holmes. So what was portrayed in the beginning kind of falls apart in the end. They kind of reversed it, and I didn't necessarily like that aspect of it.
Yeah, because like you said, she does pull her weight most of the time, and then I got pushed off a bridge.
Yeah. I mean, she's a good actress, and I liked the character. I just wish she had had a little more to do. The fact that Moriarty was pulling her strings was, I don't know. It just like the fact that she was answering to a higher power was almost like, really, you know, you're not on your own. You're not. You have to answer to somebody else. It felt like she could be her own, not bad guy, but her own boss of things. You know, she was that independent. So I don't feel like she needed to be necessarily employed by this guy. She could have been on her own, and I think it would have been better. So.
Other than that, though, she did a really good job.
Yeah, she's a good actress. She was actually, that was the first film I think I saw her in, and you know, obviously I've seen her in more films now. She's a very diverse actress as far as the roles she's taken. Seen a lot of different kind of personalities and characters that she's done. Not to go off on a tangent, but she was fantastic in Spotlight. I don't know if you've seen Spotlight.
Oh, I have. I didn't recognize her in that, though.
Yeah, she was the blonde. She was a standout in that movie, and it was just... Spotlight was an incredible movie, and I personally think that it did deserve Best Picture.
Certainly.
But again, she was just really good in that. Totally different character from Irene Adler in Sherlock Holmes, and I thought that was cool, because it was almost like polar opposites of characters. So, that was that. So you liked her despite some of the flaws of her character being portrayed as the damsel in distress later on.
Well, at the same time, that's not really her fault, because it's more the writing of the character.
That's true.
So it's like, she did a good job for what she was given, you know?
Yeah.
Same with Jude Law and his funny joke.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but I was able to look past it because it was Jude Law.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's playing a character, but he was pretty convincing as Watson. You never feel like he's hesitant on his lines. He's always delivering them, and he's committed, just like Robert Downey Jr. is to his role. So, that was cool. And again, their chemistry between each other was one of the best parts of the movie. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, but off of Irene Adler, we now have the last main cast member in the movie, and that's our villain, Mark Strong, who plays Blackwell. I'm trying to remember, Lord Blackwell, right? Yeah, he was menacing.
I would say.
He was menacing. I think the fact that they kind of introduced a little bit of black magic into it was a little bit far-fetched.
Well, I did at first too, but then we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But it did pull itself off in a way, and I'll explain that later.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the fact that they explained kind of the stuff that you were kind of skeptical about in the beginning, in the end of the film, that made a little more sense, and I was like, I appreciate that you actually took the time to explain that, because if you had left that kind of hanging, I might have walked out of the movie having a different impression and being like, yeah, I wish they had cleared that up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
But anyways, with Blackwell, he was very menacing, very egotistic, if you will, very full of himself, because he did see himself as this prophet of sorts, kind of like, I'm the one to deliver you guys.
Yeah.
Which is, he did a pretty good job with that character, because he's a very menacing looking person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he committed some pretty heinous crimes, to be honest, so, you know, I remember when I saw it, 2009, I don't remember how old I was, but I was young enough to still be kind of scared of some of those scenes when he committed the crimes or whatever. And because they had a black magic feel to them, like the bathtub scene and the scene where the guy gets caught on fire, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, now I can watch it and I'm like, whoa, that's a cool effect, you know, and I can appreciate it differently. But back then, I think it actually, not shocked me, but it kind of scared me a little bit. So, actually, the slaughterhouse scene in almost the end of the movie, it took me a while, several years actually, to finally watch all the way through, because anything involving a slaughterhouse was sensitive, in my opinion. I was sensitive to that kind of stuff.
I mean, it could have been way worse than it was.
That's true. That's true. I think the big thing was just the idea of a slaughterhouse.
Yeah. And,
you know, also seeing the pigs' heads and everything. I was more squeamish for that kind of stuff when I was younger. So, but that was still, now I can appreciate that scene and that slow motion explosion at the end. That's cool. It is cool, and that was probably one of the big set pieces of the movie, I would say. One of the biggest, probably.
I would say. It's one of the more unique things about it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I can't... thinking about other movies, I don't know many other movies that have done a big explosion or a big action sequence in that kind of small environment,
Yeah.
and be able to pull it off so well. I can't think of any other slaughterhouse explosion scene in a movie. That's the only one that comes to mind.
Well, usually with those types of things in movies, it's like a car, or like, oh, this building or something.
Yeah,
but it's
true.
like a smaller sort of thing in like a environment you would less expect it.
Yeah. So the fact that they were able to do so much in such a little environment, that was cool. It was kind of like a less is more approach, actually. Instead of this massive scene, that could have been like a car chase or something, which would have been a little more generic and probably not as memorable.
Yeah. Like, they didn't overdo it, which was important.
Yeah. And now that we're talking about action sequences and the special effects of the movie, besides the slaughterhouse scene, we also get that pretty awesome fight scene between the two guys with Jude Law and then Robert Downey Jr. and the big guy. Now, how did you feel about that fight scene?
From the most part, that was pretty good. It was more like the part that I was kind of about was when he has that little prod or that zaps him. And he puts it on the pipe, and it zaps him and knocks the other guy away. It's it's too convenient. You know? It's too, really. Yeah,
it did feel a little bit, rushed, I guess you could say. It was like, oh, we need to finish up this scene, so let's have him zap this and knock out all the guys so then we can move on.
He could have had it zapped, even though it still would have been kind of far-fetched, but not as far-fetched as that.
That's true.
And they could have just had Watson finish him off,
Yeah, that probably would have been easier, and it would have been a little more believable rather than cliche.
Because they could have just had him finish him off right as he finishes the other guy off.
That's true.
But
they could have he could have taken the two guys out on his own, and then Sherlock Holmes could have maybe tripped the big guy or something. You're right, it was a little too convenient. I think he could have taken them out a little more believably, if you know what I mean. Not so cliche. Was that your problem with the scene? It was cliche?
It wasn't cliche, it was just too convenient. Because it's like, oh, it zapped him, and he just happens to knock the guy that Watson was fighting away.
The two guys that knocked Watson are fighting, they're right there, and, oh, that was convenient. All three are now knocked out or something, so now we can go to the next scene. It just felt a little bit too easy.
They just wanted to transition to the next thing.
And you could kind of tell they wanted to transition, so.
Other than that, the fight scenes were pretty much really good. My favorite ones were when he would analyze the person he was fighting to be like...
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up.
He would do it, the slow motion, depiction of what he was going to do, and then he would do it fast, and it would just be it's cool to see his thinking process like that, because that's really accurate to his character.
That was really cool. That was probably one of the biggest highlights from the movie, as well as the chemistry between Law and Downey Jr. I love the opening scene where he's, paralyzed vocal cords and all that. That was so cool, and then you see him do it, and it's like, whoa, you see his thought process before he actually does it, and you're like, wow, this guy's pretty, he's crafty, he can do some stuff. So that was cool. And then that came back in the boxing scene, which I know how I felt about it. What did you think of the boxing scene? Did you like it?
I liked it for the most part. The only part was kind of the music was kind of offsetting from when I first started it, but then someone told me that, boxing in England had a very Irish root to it.
Yeah.
So then I was kind of like, well, it makes sense then.
Yeah, so you kind of let that slide after hearing that. Yeah. I like the fact that they played that music rather than... I don't know what other kind of music they would have played during it.
It would have been weird to have, a lot of the other stuff,
Yeah, the fact that they went with something a little more toned down and Irish, I like that because it fit the tone of what they were doing. They were beating the crap out of each other with their fists, but at least it didn't feel as brutal as it would have with, I think WWE music would have felt really out of place.
Well, with that, too, is that, say you have the music when, Blackwell and Sherlock are fighting in that last scene.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
That makes it seem that, that fight in the boxing ring has such high stakes, which it really doesn't.
Right.
It's just, oh, I won the bet, and all that.
Yeah.
So, the music placement, I feel was pretty important, because it does help with that.
And he did really mess that guy up, the way who he was boxing with, And I feel like it was a little bit fast when he sees Irene, and he's like, I don't want to look bad.
Gotta go now.
Yeah, I gotta go. We gotta progress the plot along,
Yeah.
But it was still cool, and he messed that guy up even more than the guy in the beginning. He did more things, and he was like, I think he said recovery like 6 months or whatever for that guy.
6 weeks, I think.
6 weeks. 6 weeks. So that's a long time. But anyways, the boxing scene was really compelling. I was in it until it was over, and then it kind of gets you energized. And then when it's finally done, you're like, whew. You can take a deep breath, because then the next scene I think is a transition scene, and it's a dialogue after that. So, but that was really cool, and that was the only 2 times we see where he analyzes what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because with Blackwell, his sort of takedown is kind of very coincidental, like everything else.
Yeah, that's true.
If we want to move on to that, just so we can give that context a little bit.
Yeah,
Fight
let's.
with Blackwater.
Yeah, let's move on to that. Blackwater, Blackwell. Yeah, the final fight with Blackwell. I liked where it took place.
The bridge was very ominous, but also like innovative, if you will.
Yeah,
because it wasn't just like on top of a bridge. It was like a bridge that was like part of the Industrial Revolution. It was like the first of its time in England.
Yeah,
so
and it was a very large set piece, I think. And when they were fighting, you were believing the fact that they were this high up on this bridge that hadn't been finished yet. That was the other thing. There's a lot of bridge fight sequences in movies, but this one was the first one that did something different with, like, this bridge is not fixed yet. They just happen to be up here, and this is very dangerous where they are.
Yeah.
So it added the stakes became bigger when they started fighting. It was like, someone's going to fall off, or someone's going to trip, or this is not good.
Well, someone does fall off, but they conveniently fall on a separate plank.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That was another thing that was kind of like, if you're going to kill off a character, just do it, not like, oh, my friend, she's not dead, I can fight now.
Do you think it would have been a more ballsy decision if they had killed her off?
I think so, yeah. Because
it would have fueled Sherlock with rage more, and he would have seriously taken out... He does take his anger out on Blackwell, but cause I think when she falls, when he screams, no! I think he thinks that she is dead, until, later, he goes down, and,
Well, he sees her right as he's fighting Blackwell, so
That's right.
He does know that she's alive when he is fighting him.
Or at least knocked out.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Still breathing.
Still alive.
Yeah, still alive. Just unconscious.
For the most part with that scene, it was pretty good until the end of it, where I think what happens is that beam falls and he falls through.
It falls through the platform, and then the chain pulls it along with him or something, and he falls onto the chains, and then something snaps again. So it's like a 2-step process.
That was really...
Yeah, it was like, that's not... I
It's
don't know
like
if that would actually happen.
He fell from the chains, and then magically the chains knotted up and hung him right under the bridge. It's
that's
like,
true. Although the hanging or whatever, that was a pretty memorable death.
It was a memorable death, but it's still like...
And I liked when Sherlock was standing over him, and he was like, like this, like, you are done. You are done with these murders. I have finally rose above you, and you are done terrorizing London and that kind of stuff. So that was cool to see him overcome that, because I know Blackwell kind of got into his head a bit in part of the movie, and that was interesting to see too. Mm-hmm. That was the aesthetic of that, and his dreams or whatever. That was a little bit psychedelic, a little bit. So, but the way that the villain Blackwell dies was pretty memorable, and I think where the final fight scene was filmed was a good choice. So, that's I think that's all I have to say about that fight scene.
Well, we had special effects to talk about too.
I'm sorry, special effects and right. Sorry.
That was another problem I had. There was one when they're by that ship, and that cog thing with the chain is rolling, and it looks so bad. I did. If I were to rewatch it, I'm thinking of the scene right now. Now that I think about it, it didn't look too great. No, it looked like one of those apps that you download on your phone, and it's like, I got it.
Yeah, like a special effect app on your phone. I actually have one of those. Yeah, and it did look fairly similar to that. It's a good app. It's like, for an app, the effects look cool, and they look better.
It's an app, but it's not for movies.
Yeah, it's not for movies. It should be it should be a higher level of quality than a phone app, you know? So that, yeah, you're right, that part didn't look too great.
The only other part that really didn't look good to me was the part where that weight under Blackwell that's pulling him slightly off the bridge keeps on descending. It's kind of like, it's not as bad as that one, but it's still like,
yeah.
Oof. Other than that, it was pretty solid, pretty consistent.
Yeah, it was. And the overall theme with like Moriarty, I thought that was cool. How they were kind of setting something up at the same time. It didn't feel cluttered. I do want to say it didn't feel cluttered. It could have if they had put him in too much, but I think they put him in enough to add this element of mystery, as well as, we could go further with this after the movie, which, as we know, they did with A Game of Shadows, which hopefully we can review after you see that one.
We'll see.
So, but did you like Moriarty in?
I thought he was pretty consistent. They didn't put him in too much, which I feel would have probably hurt it because they already have like 4 main characters that they're trying to shove in. And
you can only stuff a character with no face in for so long until like his mystery kind of starts to wear off.
Yeah, it's like you put him in too much before that mystery does unsolve itself, if you will.
Yeah. It
kind of is like, oh, we know who that is. Because you only see him, like, shadowed in that carriage, like, 2 or 3 times throughout the whole
carriage,
movie.
And I think there's another time in the train.
Yeah.
But that's about it. There's, like, only 1 or 2 scenes, and then the rest of it he's referred to, but he's not actually shown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was cool. And Blackwell's overall plot to, like, the gas or whatever? To release. That was cool because that was from a scientific perspective, not so much a black magic, you know? Mm-hmm. And as we already know, Sherlock explains all of the black magic as being, he kind of debunks all that.
Yeah.
So, and that was cool. Seeing all of his thought process again as he explained this, of course, as Blackwell's about to fall and get hung. But seeing him explain that gave more context to what was happening earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
And I thought that was necessary.
Because, like, when I first was like going through it, I was like, this better not just be like stereotypical black magic, oh, the sorcerer awakens. Like, I wanted it to be that smart sort of, this is how he lived, this is how he set that guy on fire.
Yes.
And all that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was able to explain itself, which I felt was really important, rather than just, oh, it's a magic man,
Yeah. It also was able to maintain a sense of humor in many scenes, rather than becoming bogged down by seriousness.
It was dark, but it wasn't too dark.
Right. I like that level, and that's where I think the credit goes to Guy Ritchie as a director. I think he found a nice balance between the two, because if it had gone one way or the other, it probably would have become very not believable if it had become more of a cartoon.
Yeah.
And the other way, it probably would have become too violent of a film to really take seriously as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the balance between that was cool. And the dialogue, for the most part, was clever and witty, and I liked that. So, but overall, that's all we have to say, really, about the special effects, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, really, there isn't too much special effects other than that, and, like, the credit scene, obviously, when they have the drawings or whatever, but that's really not part of it, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's kind of just like
it's its own thing.
It's thought process, and when Blackwell's kind of getting into his head and everything. Part of that felt a little out of place, especially abruptly after the slaughterhouse incident.
Yeah.
And I feel like they could have shortened that down a little bit to get to the climax. But that's probably my only gripe with the movie,
Yeah, but other than that, like, they have a lot of problems with pacing. Like, like we were talking about how they finish off that fight just to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
They finish up the boxing match just to proceed.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
the pacing is a bit
slow it down and let it breathe a little bit,
Yeah, the pacing is a bit all over the place, kind of. But if you're willing to look past that, which I think I was when I originally saw it, and because of so many other aspects of the movie being decent and good, the pacing wasn't a huge issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's about it. The only other thing I think we could touch on with the movie is the music of the movie.
The music was pretty fitting. I liked that it was very, like, Victorian London, sort of.
Yeah. It felt very, not familiar, but it felt like it belonged.
Time period.
Yeah, it felt like it captures the time period well, with also adding this a little bit of a modern twist that made it relevant, and that was cool. And I really liked the music, like the theme music from the like the end credits and everything.
Yeah, that was really good.
And on to talking about end credits, I really liked how they ended on a cliffhanger, because that was like, ooh, I mean, I feel if they had concluded it like all the way, I might have been a little disappointed. The fact that they left it open, almost got me more excited. Kind of like with Empire Strikes Back, with such a incredible finale, but they leave so many doors open that you're so excited to see Return of the Jedi, and that's how I kind of felt with this movie.
It kind of gives you that like sense that Sherlock might have when it's like, oh, I have a new mystery. I really want to solve that now. It anticipates you for that next movie. It makes you feel like that sort of anticipation that he feels.
I think after seeing that, I immediately went to like the internet and I was like, is there going to be a Sherlock Holmes 2? And as we already know, Game of Shadows came out, I think only 2 years after that, maybe even less.
I think so, yeah. It was pretty quick.
Yeah, and that's a review for another time, but that is a fun time. I actually, not to get on another tangent, but I actually like A Game of Shadows more than the original, and I'll talk about why in the review for A Game of Shadows.
So do we want to give this movie a rating?
Yes, so the rating system for ROC Movie Reviews is going to be 1 to 10.
That is a good scale.
Yeah?
And no halvesies either.
Right, exactly.
No those solid numbers.
You have to do solid numbers. I don't want like a 5.5 or a 7.9 or something.
7.921? What?
Yeah, no, no decimals. It has to be numbers, and it's out of 10. 10 what? I don't know. It doesn't have to be an item. It's just something out of 10. So, because I'm not sure what I'm going to rate mine just yet, what would you give the 2009 Sherlock Holmes?
I would probably give it like a 6.
A 6 out of 10?
Like, a 6 is good. Because, like, in my book, a 5 is considered average. In this movie, it's good, but it doesn't innovate so much where it's, like, amazing.
Yeah.
Because, for example, Mad Max Fury Road, compared to the originals, innovates it completely out of the water. Like, this...
I actually have Mad Max down there. Yeah, that was an incredible film. Yeah.
But, like, with this, it doesn't... It does stay in that realm of a Sherlock Holmes story, which is still good.
Yep.
It doesn't innovate it too much, which I feel is pretty important. It sort of does with the black magic sense, quote unquote. But I mean, I would just, with the pacing problems and things like that, it just kind of lowers it down from a 7. Cause
do you feel it was necessary for a kind of this modern reboot in a sense of this character, and because we didn't have many incarnations of Sherlock in TV or movies before this, because I think Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock came after this one, I believe. So this one kind of set the standard a little bit for that new kind of modern Sherlock Holmes. So I thought that was pretty cool. My rating for this film, I agree with you on a lot of accounts. And I had such a good time with this movie. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but I think the acting and the writing propelled it to be a better film than it might have. It might have been not great as a film if it's again, like we said, if it didn't reach that balance so well. And that's again Guy Ritchie. So I think I'd have to rate Sherlock Holmes. I think I'll go 7. 7 out of 10.
Fair.
Yeah, 7's fair. It's not, it's not an incredible, absolutely amazing movie.
It's a good movie.
I feel like it's a good, solid movie, and it was a nice springboard for this. I don't want to call it a franchise just yet because there's only 2 movies, but I feel like seeing these characters on screen again when Game of Shadows came out. After the end of this one, I was really excited, and I was, invested. Yeah. I was invested in these characters, and I wanted to see more of this world that Guy Ritchie introduced into this one. So, 6 out of 10 for you, 7 out of 10 for me. Yeah, that's about all you had to say about the movie, right? I believe I'm done. So, thank you for coming on. That was fun. Hopefully we'll be able to review more movies in the future, and yeah. Till next time, guys, you can subscribe, join the realm and the creators, and I will see you guys in the next video, whether it's a movie review or not. See you guys.